Hello everyone. So wanted to hop on and do a quick video. Not feeling my best. Stuffy, just stomach, just not feeling my best. But the Lord gave me a quick message anyway. He actually started to give me this message yesterday. I was spending some time in my garden because it was messy. I hadn't had time to get into it and clean the weeds and do things like that. So I was like, neglecting it. And I was like, okay, go out there and look because it's a mess. And so I finally went out there and I noticed that grass had grown up under all my plants, and some of my plants had gotten so big they were leaning over, and my tomato plant that I had multiplied, but the original plant died. And so there was two others that were kind of growing but hadn't produced any fruit. And then I began to look at my zucchini, examine it. I had some dead leaves, just like rotten leaves, like they had been laying on the ground and getting wet for so long. But I still had fruit being produced. I still had like 5 or 6 zucchinis growing, and I looked and I had one rotten bell pepper at the top of one of my red bell pepper plants, but the other ones were fine. And so I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at all the plants, the beautiful flowers and bushes that I had planted over the spring, and they're all growing, and there's weeds growing in between them too that look like the plant. And so the Lord began to speak to me about that. He said, isn't it so funny how we plant things and it grows, and we're so excited about the growth of the new thing where you planted the seed and you see a sprout and you're like, yes, this plant is gonna make it, and then the plant begins to grow even more, and then it's producing fruit, and things are just happening, and things are rolling, and the sun is beaming, and the water's flowing because when you water it's just, everything just looks so amazing. You're just so excited because you are producing something. And then the season continues to go on, and you maybe neglect it, or you begin to get tired in your body, you begin to get tired in what you're doing, you begin to get overwhelmed or just distracted, or whatever the case might be, and then you're not tending to the garden as you used to because you don't have the time as much, or you're not making the time. And then when you finally realize, hey, I gotta pay attention to this thing because it's still producing fruit, you go out there and there's weeds everywhere and things are dying, but stuff is still being produced. And the Lord said, this is what happens in our lives. We continue to produce fruit. Our gifts, come without repentance. We continue to produce and do great things and live and all of that. But underneath all of that, other things can be growing. Other weeds can be growing. See, weeds germinate just like regular seeds do. They both germinate, they both need water, they both need sun. But the thing about a weed is you don't have to pay attention to it for it to grow. It just pops up when it wants to. You don't gotta plant that seed. It's already there. It's already planted and you can't even see it. But then all of a sudden, when your season shifts, you realize that this thing has been there for so long and now it's grown. And it's either suffocating your other plants, or it's making it a mess. Your garden or your place doesn't look good anymore. I mean, and I'm talking about a garden, but now I'm talking about our lives. There's weeds in our lives. There can be people that are weeds. There can be relationships that are weeds that are coming up, and you didn't even know that they were growing that way. You didn't know that they were affecting your fruit. I went outside and my bell pepper was rotten because it had sat there for so long amongst the weeds. I recognized when I cleaned out some of my zucchini, some zucchini had not been able to fully grow because of the weeds that were surrounded around it. I realized that the tomato plant that had multiplied still had not produced fruit. I even noticed that there were black widows and brown spiders and all these bugs that had begun to make their little habitats in this area because it had gone so long without being tended to, but it was still producing fruit. So I'm thinking, as long as zucchinis is popping up, I'm good, right? Bell peppers popping up, everything's popping up, I'm still eating good, but I'm not paying attention to the growth of the weeds. And so I had to go out there and spend a whole, a couple hours cleaning and watching and looking for the black widows because I didn't want to get bit, and making sure that I got deep and making sure I closed up the holes from the gophers that were trying to come in. There was so much work that had to be put in because I had not paid attention to my garden. And so the Lord is telling me that in my own life, especially with relationships, pay attention to the seeds. Pay attention to what's growing. Pay attention to who's coming to your life and why they are there. Are they helping you produce fruit? Are they taking and suffocating the fruit that you're trying to produce? Are they sucking away the nutrients from where it's supposed to be going? Maybe you're supposed to be pouring into something right now. Maybe you're supposed to be pouring into your gift, your job, your career, or your children, or whatever. But that weed, that person, that situation is sucking your energy. It's sucking your nutrients. And so you can't even help and produce the fruit that you're supposed to be focusing on. And then when you finally realize it, it's almost like it's too late. At the end of the day, I had to cut back my zucchini plant because the leaves had died. They were dead. They couldn't produce anymore, so I had to cut it all the way back. I had to completely cut down the tomato plant. It's gone. Now, it's not saying that it won't produce again because the roots are still there. It's still a vibrant plant, but I had to cut it back because it wasn't producing what I needed it to. And so what do you have to cut back in your life? Who do you have to cut back? What do you have to do to make sure that your garden is producing the fruit that will nourish you and keep you healthy? Think about it. I'm thinking about it. Now I'm going to take some time and write in my journal and figure out what I need to cut back, because I'm sure there's some things. So I hope this encourages you just as much as it encourages me. Have a blessed night.